enjoying from my patio. Glad I'm glad to be back here. It's been hectic lately, but I'm just gonna get straight into it. So today I am drinking what is known as dragon's milk. It's a bourbon barrel aged stout, and yeah, it's heavy. Um, it's a heavy stout for a heavy song, or at least, well, there's some heavy parts in it, but the subject matter is more fitting for the heaviness of this song, and so why I chose this beer for this song. Love this beer, but definitely one you gotta keep down in some moderation because it's like 11% ABV. It's good stuff. If you like bourbon, it's a good beer to try. So I highly recommend it. I've been got turned on to this a number of years ago. But anyway, enough said about that. And let's get into the second to last song in the album. And this one is a number 46, and it is titled A Telltale of Two Cities. So the music for this song, I don't want to point out way too much. It's a little all over the place, but, somewhat within, my wheelhouse of stuff that I've done before, but definitely all over the place, which fits with, I guess, the speakers within this song, because pretty much every character has a speaking role within this song, and so it fits at least that way. But other than that, I'd like to point out I ended up sort of in the middle of the song, did a bass line that I ended up time stretching because I wanted it to like fit in the background and be very droney. It'd be interesting to hear in some subwoofers because I don't really have any subs anymore. Yeah, that would be very interesting to see if it just rumbles in the background during those sections. So my boy Thomas, if you're listening to this, let me know if it really rumbles on your system. But that same section I ended up recycling, kind of because of Lady Elm, her character, but thought it would be cool to make another loop from the field recording of the wind chimes in volume 3, the song Lady Elm in a Courtyard. So I took a small section of that and kind of looped it, which you can hear that sort of in the background in that same section of the song, and I thought that turned out pretty cool. And then other than that, there was a section after that where I put on some heavy wah for a little bit, and sang in this like really nasally kind of voice, which I've been trying to think of who I was kind of emulating with that. Just, I don't know, like 80s funk sort of stuff that I've heard on the radio before that I personally think is just hilarious because of how like nasally the vocal tone is. And I thought it was funny, and that was the only reason I did that, just to kind of like poke fun of it in a way. Hopefully it works. But yeah, I did that in there as well. And yeah, that's about all I can really say when it comes to the music. So To get into the literal meaning of the song, we'll just list out all the speakers in it. We've got Lady Elm, Eugene, the Black Knight, the Protagonist, Parson Brown, Auteur, Master Bates, the Catechist, and the Anchor. I mean, everybody speaks at some point within the song, even if it's just a couple of lines here and there. So, the literal meaning. Yummy. In leaving the sanctuary at the end of the last song, like the Protagonist and Black Knight end up reconvening with pretty much everybody else from the tribe, but it's Lady Elm and Parson Brown that they meet at first, like outside the sanctuary, and the four of them end up walking together and reconvening with at least like Eugene and the Catechist, in the like massive room where the massive television sets are. And anyway, along the way, they realized that the violence that had been happening, like while they were hiding in the sanctuary during the last song, that violence is somewhat calmed down. So they make it into the TV room and find Eugene, and they come to realize that it was Eugene who was on the loudspeaker in the previous song. That he's basically in charge now, or that he's the one that definitely led this prison revolt happening. Then they again see on the television's live footage at that moment, and it's they see Auteur outside the prison on the city streets, and Auteur is a she, excuse me. She is filming for her art, everything that's going on, with the revolution or whatever. Meanwhile, it's also showing Master Bates. He's gained his freedom, and he's basically rioting and inciting further violence. And meanwhile, they're all still in the prison watching this, and Eugene is actually celebrating it. And so in going through the prison, before that, the Catechist comes up, and she had discovered that Parson Brown had been hiding a secret stash somewhere near the sanctuary area where he was kind of set up. And it was, she specifically found a pineapple wine that he had been stashing and kept the entire time, which that goes into previous songs talking about pineapple and all. So we've already discussed that. So in anger, the Catechist tells Eugene, and since she had always wanted to taste pineapple but never had before, they realized that Parson Brown had never shared this stuff, had it the entire time, and he was hoarding it, and thus had kind of betrayed them in that sense. So knowing this, Eugene makes the order for Parson Brown to be executed then and there, showing that there's consequence for these kind of actions. But it also, want to point out that it shows Eugene himself lacks redemption or forgiveness towards others. So in the process of walking away from all this, Eugene ends up taking all the pineapple with him and signifying that he's also willing to steal or withhold, but like specifically from his wife, Lady Elm. And with this, he's also like withholding his affection towards her. You know, she definitely wants to be with him and everything, but he's just completely kind of changed his mind because of this revolution going on. So, although stronger, I guess, the Black Knight ends up rebuking Eugene for his actions. And he basically repeats some of the lines from the previous song, you know, that he doesn't exactly call Eugene a bastard, but basically, you know, says that his actions are that of, you know, a bastard. And the Black Knight tells Eugene that he can have all the power if he so chooses it, but the Black Knight adds that he would rather keep his own soul and integrity, you know, towards those that he loves. So basically, Eugene is now in charge of the entire facility, and so at the end, forsaken by her husband, Lady Elm ends up monologuing of, you know, the pain of the relationship failing and being lost, and thus, you know, it's kind of like an existential crisis that she's dealing with at that very moment, with her heart being broken. And so that's basically what happens in the song. So going into things I've talked about, you know, mentioned before with like the fruit of the spirit that I put into this song, it would be self-control for this particular song, which once again the message rewords is I guess like the ability to marshal and direct our energies wisely. The amoral step that I personally put in here, you know, once again, my, you know, personal take on things, is what I would call the willingness to betray those closest to you, which happens with both Parson Brown and Eugene. I mean, if you want to break it down, what we see in this song lyrically is the schism of the tribe itself. At the end of the song, the protagonist, Black Knight, and Lady Elm are basically together on one side, and then even though, you know, two of the people are outside the prison, the rest of them are on the other side, you know, essentially they're okay with the violence that's going on, whereas the other three are not. And, you know, as far as the Black Knight rebuking Eugene for his part of all this stuff. So with all that being said, I want to talk about the personal meaning, because I would say 85% of this song is just for the purpose of storytelling. I mean, it indirectly fits in with like the personal meaning, but I wrote it in such a way as, you know, basically to show, you know, the schism of the tribe itself, and that the tribe is dead. That's 85% of the purpose of the song. And then, like, all of that is to build up really the personal meaning that happens at the end of the song, where it becomes more melodic and more like a post-hardcore sort of sound. So the personal meaning for me is, a literal death of the tribe, or at least my role in a tribe. Hence the heavy beer. The character of Eugene in this song in particular, represents primarily two people who were in my life, and arguably other people that were part of this tribe that I was, within. And them more indirectly, there's no hard feelings with that per se, but I don't want to go into too much detail, because I've not talked about this publicly at all, or really posted about it, written anything about it, until talking about it now, at least publicly speaking. In private, people who are really close to me, I have talked about what had happened and everything. So what it really comes down to, without giving away every single detail and throwing anybody under the bus, because especially at this point in my life, I don't want to do that. Yet still, for the sake of my own integrity and everything, tell at least my side of the story or whatever. So to kind of, summing up what really happened, I guess it's been going on 4 years now. It's crazy. Wow. There was a situation one night. Our little tribe was gathered, just hanging out and stuff. And to make a long story short, there was damage to some personal property of mine. And the thing is, everybody expected me to be just completely pissed off and angry and blowing up about it, but I was actually pretty calm. Part of that may have been the fact that I was running on 2 hours of sleep at that moment, but I really don't think it was that. Really, I've been through this exact same situation before. It wasn't my fault. I wasn't really involved in the accident itself at that moment. But yeah, I had been through the exact same thing before. It had been handled correctly before, and I had no reason to believe that this situation was going to be any different. And so I was super calm about it. My attitude was, mistakes happen, accidents happen, shit happens. There's no reason to get angry about that at all, because hey, I've made plenty of, accidents myself. There's nothing about that itself is deliberate. There's, nothing betraying about that itself. But what made things bad was what happened after that, or rather what didn't happen after that. Because of the nature of the situation and the particular damages, there could have been an easy way to handle and fix things, but the person who was responsible decided that they didn't want to go that route. They wanted to handle things themselves. And in that moment of being told that, I knew it was a bad idea on their part, but when it's somebody who's well within your inner circle, you just automatically trust that person at their word. And because it was this particular person, you know, responsible for it, and the fact that they were married to one of my closest friends at the time, both of them sort of ended up together with it. And you know, they both told me that night, when it happened, that they would take care of the problem, um, and everything would work out. And I took them at their word, because these were two people, like, I was one of the only people with them, like, on their wedding day. You know, they had called me like their literal, like, brother. Or, yeah, like, both of them were, like, literally told me that I was pretty much adopted into their family, you know. And it was the same for them with mine, like, is, you know, my brother and sister. I thought they would always be there. The problem didn't get solved. A year later, after it happened, the damage was still there. And it put me at a financial loss, I suppose. I was, a year later, pretty much in the process of taking care of the damages myself. And pretty much at that moment was like the last time I heard from at least one of them. Told them, like, what the quote I had received was, and, you know, they basically said, you know, well, I thought you told us not to worry about it or whatever, and, you know, do you need some help with it? And yeah, I don't really remember telling them that, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they took something I said out of context, or, you know, something, you know, I don't know. And I basically said, you know, hey, whatever you can do will help, you know. And, you know, I was getting quotes and everything. Like, I was doing my best to cut all the corners I could to help them. I didn't expect it to be as much of I didn't think it was going to cost as much, like, money wise, even. But I mean, one of the quotes, you know, it was a significant amount of cash, one that even surprised me. And, you know, I wasn't going to go with that particular company to have it fixed, because they were just asking for too much. And anyway, one of them said, you know, we'll get together, you know, like, next weekend, sort of thing. You know, this was like through a text message or whatever. We'll get some beers, I'll give you, you know, a little bit of money, and we'll just chill. And I was like, sweet. And that was the last time I heard from that person. A couple of months later, I heard from the other one, you know, and that was the last time I heard from them, because, you know, they made some comment that I know didn't, it wasn't snarky or sarcastic or anything like that, but because I was angry at them, it just, because I felt betrayed by that point. You know, all I could do was say, you know, thanks, like, in a text message as response, and that was, the last time I heard from them. And, now it's been a couple of years now. So I had a number of people tell me, that the situation, what happened with them was, completely messed up. I had multiple people tell me, that I needed to take them to court, that I needed, go small claims or whatever, and that just was never on the table for me. Like, I knew if I did that, like, friendship was going to be over regardless. Like, all I wanted to do was make sure that the friendship stayed intact. There was probably a couple of things that I could have done differently, maybe been a little more direct with some things, but I can honestly say that I pretty much kept my mouth shut, never forced any confrontation or anything, because this was my tribe, this was my family, and these were people that I thought would always be in my life till death. I honestly believed that. This song for me is about having people who you thought you could always count on, people that, you give your broken trust to after years of rejections and betrayals from other people, and people that you make yourself vulnerable to. And it took a long time for me to really do that. I remember moments when I was, at one time 6-7 years ago, having like anxiety attacks, basically, at a particular time. And one of the two of the married couple, like, I didn't want to talk to them about it, but I was urged to make myself vulnerable. And I remember telling them what was going on in my life, and that was a big leap of trust for me, because I didn't really have reason to be vulnerable with them, but I was urged to, and I decided to, and I didn't regret it. Like, I felt accepted, and that was like one of the steps of this person becoming family in my life. And I realized that they did the same in their own ways, of realizing that these people and me, like, we were so close, but now it's not going to happen ever again with them, in this life, that like the trust is completely broken. And that, for me, the best thing to do is just to let it go, and let them go on their way in peace. But, that like the loss of relationship is the consequence of that. I see it as, it's a telltale situation that shows who they really are. And, it doesn't annul their existence in my life, but, because like the good times that we had, and even the hard times that we went through together, like, all that stuff happened, yet the idea, which I use a phrase that I guess I came up with called a retrograded shadow. And what that means in context of this song and this situation is that, like, the betrayal as a memory casts a shadow on all the good times and rough times all together, and it starts to make you wonder if they if their character, if the relationship ever really was real or true, if they were ever the people that you believed them to be, if we were ever truly a family or a tribe of sorts. And even with that, there was, that was just two people, but, part of the fallout with it too is that there was an entire other group kind of centered around these people that I haven't seen since like before the pandemic. I remember one of the people in the tribe, another person who, none of this happened, with them, but, they were part of the tribe. Like, at one time, they introduced me as, like, being an older brother to a friend of theirs, like, at a, like, birthday party kind of thing. And this was someone who I had kind of, like, rubbed heads with at different times, but this person, like, saying right in front of me, that like they considered me a brother, like an older brother, like, was something that I took to heart, because that mattered to me, like, that this person would say that. And after all the good times, the bad times, like all this shared time together, that they considered me as a brother just meant the world. And then, like, a number of months ago, I ran into another member of this tribe, and I was with another friend of mine. We were out just like painting the town or whatever, playing video games or whatever. And I saw one of the other people of the tribe, and like, I know I saw them, and I was like busy with my other friend, and I'm pretty sure they probably saw me too, but like, we walked right past each other without even acknowledging each other's existence. And I know, like, I'm as culpable for that as anybody else, but it just struck me as so strange afterward, because it was like, just a couple of years before that, we were so like ingrained in each other's lives, and it was somebody that I really butt heads with at one time, but despite our butting heads, was somebody that I did hold in high regard as a member of this tribe, and someone that I maybe wasn't as close to, but was still like family by default. And the fact that we just walked right past each other without even like batting an eyelash, just, I don't know what to say to that other than it's fucked up. And realizing that, like, back to the one before that, the person that said that they were, they considered me a brother, like, pretty sure they deleted me from like Facebook altogether. Like we never knew each other, or were never close. I don't know why that is, but I don't know. I mean, I suppose that in many ways the tribe in that song split, and I found myself in the middle, sort of alone, in ways, though I was trying to do right by everybody. Like that's all I wanted, was to do right by my friends, and I don't think I was done right at all. But at this point, like, it's so far removed that I mean, what's done is done, or rather, what wasn't done is done. So, like, I ended up having to get rid of that piece of property um, because it was just, I mean, it was a whole ordeal trying to take care of it, and myself, like, it didn't work, and it became too much, and somebody else ended up taking it and fixing it. And I saw it one day, and it hurt. It really hurt, but somebody took care of it. So, but it put me at a loss. I would say too that there another, like, more minor meaning for this song was like a death of another tribe, like a church from when I was growing up, and that sort of happening 20 some years ago. That was sort of in the back of my mind writing this song too, but then seeing, like, particular leaders of that time and movement. It was a married couple, and saw in the last couple of years that they ended up getting divorced, and it took me a long time. It wasn't until earlier this year that I reached out to one of the people and found out what happened, and these were two people who were a very pivotal part of me becoming a Christian, and like my initial discipleship, and this person in particular, the wife of the couple, back in my high school days, like, I saw her as embodying a lot of the characteristics that I wanted in a wife. And then finding out about, like, what happened, I didn't judge her for the stuff, because, like, I just wanted to understand at that point. But it's that, like, retrograded shadow again of just wondering, well, were things ever really the way they actually appeared at the time, or was there some sort of deception going on? And I'm not saying that as like it was some nefarious plot on anybody's part, but just I don't know how to explain it. Like, I really don't mean that, like, as to imply that they were deceptive or nefarious or anything. It just sort of is what it is, that maybe they didn't even realize it at the time that, they were putting on a mask or whatever. I don't know. It's just, you start to wonder those kind of things. And I mean, I guess there's more that I could say about that, but for the sake of moving on, I started, this one person, told me that, they loved me still, like in a platonic sort of way. And, I responded to him and said, I don't believe you. I don't have any reason to, and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus or anything like that. I don't know why you can expect me to believe that in the first place. And it was, a lot of it was because I realized that she and I were coming, because of like the nature of our personalities and the things, maybe because of traumas we've been through and just lack or whatever, like I recognized and pointed out like we were complete opposites in so many ways, and so I mean, all that stuff just was brought into question. Meanwhile, like I wasn't saying any of that stuff in any kind of like judgmental way. It was just like stating things like as a matter of fact, kind of thing. And there was an idea in the song that it's kind of later on in the song of like the idea of being the hero of your own story, that and suggesting that like perhaps no one can truly be heroic until they're willing to appear as a true villain to others. That like controlling one's own narrative for for public perception is where so many go wrong today. So to go into like the specific references in the song, there's a reference. Well, the very title itself and in the beginning line that says, it's been like the worst of times, is based on the opening and all to Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. And like the novel, at the end, the character of Dornay is in a prison, but a person who looks just like him, another character named Cartone, visits Dornay and basically takes his place so that Dornay can be liberated, and in the process, Cartone is put to death via the guillotine. So it's a story of self-sacrifice, and what happens in that Charles Dickens book is pretty much the opposite of what happens here. Eugene's not willing to sacrifice himself or anything, so he ends up taking over the prison as the revolutionary and all. Then there's a line, that Lady Elm says, "Your kiss don't withhold, your love sweeter than wine," which is a reference to Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 2. There's kind of an indirect reference to Bono's autobiography of Surrender. He talks some in that book about like how his journey was to find home, like with his wife and all, and this like search for home being a closing or healing of the wounds of like his formative years and years of exile and stuff like that. But I realized that in this story and in like so many times for me that like a big theme within this poem is, and within this album as a whole, is that they want to build a home and find a home, but what ends up happening is kind of the opposite of that like the home and the tribe family like falls apart. There's a reference, I've said it plenty of times before, of taste and see that the Lord is good, and that ties in with like the whole pineapple thought experiment that I've already talked about in previous chapters, how it represents things like goodness and compassion, faith, love, experiencing God, stuff like that. And there's a reference to destruction as a form of creation, which comes from like my favorite movie of all time, Donnie Darko. But that quotes actually them referencing Graham Greene's The Destructors, and that is shown in Auteur's little section of the song because it shows that she wants to see what will happen when this like destruction takes place, and she wants change, but for her it's not like change for the sake of change, but it's more about like entertainment, like for the sake of art. She says also, I'm a sonnet, call me King Macbeth, you know, that's reference to Shakespeare, you know, his play, you know, of Macbeth, you know, lots of tyranny, murder, and whatnot, guilt, tragedy, that sort of thing. There's also a reference to Saint Sebastian, who was a martyr around 288 AD. Saint Sebastian was tied to a post or a tree and was basically shot full of arrows, but instead of dying, he survived and ended up going and like evangelizing to the Roman Emperor Diocletian, and at that point was like clubbed to death. Saint Sebastian, or Sebastian in this case, also refers to Fight Club, you know, Chuck Palahniuk, and that section, of course, is more nihilistic, and that's, you know, reflecting Master Bates. But I've listened to interviews of Chuck Palahniuk, and you know, him saying that there's a lot of satire going on in Fight Club, and you know, I love the movie and everything, but even reading the book, it's pretty awesome. And you know, that Palahniuk was saying that, you know, a lot of what he was aiming to do in writing Fight Club was to, you know, figure out masculinity and how to connect with other human beings. So, you know, I would say that despite being reflective of that like nihilistic quality in the song, it also is trying to show that like Master Bates as a character is looking for some sort of guidance, because like Chuck Palahniuk, in interview I saw with Joe Rogan a while back, Palahniuk was like citing like Joseph Campbell and sort of monomythic sort of stuff, and that these characters were looking for some sort of like father or mentor purpose in life sort of thing, and that's also what's happening in this. He's not exactly finding that, and so it deals with, you know, these kind of destructive tendencies. But like Sebastian and Marla Singer both referenced, you know, in the lyrics to the song, but I don't think a lot of people realize that the main character in Fight Club, his name is actually Sebastian, and that's kind of more revealed in the two sequels to Fight Club, which were written by Chuck Palahniuk as actual comic books a few years back. And you know, in those comic books, Sebastian and Marla Singer end up married and having kids and stuff like that. And Tyler Durden comes back into the picture and all, so it kind of is revealed that, you know, in a sense, like Tyler Durden is almost like a generational curse sort of thing, and so that's sort of what I wanted to allude to, I guess, in the song too. There's reference to the phrase "new abortion." That's both, to that's referencing Fight Club as well. In the novel, there's like Marla Singer says to Tyler Durden that after the first time they have sex, that she hopes she gets pregnant so she can have his abortion or whatever. But it's also, New Abortion is a reference to a song by Slipknot from, I believe, their Iowa album. And basically in that song, Corey Taylor uses, the phrase "new abortion" as kind of like a more abstract or a different meaning than like, he basically thinks of it as like people who are born and grow up in the world, but they have no like real lasting purpose in life and can't really find their way. And so like, apparently he's, said numerous times that song to him is kind of like his testimony to like his fans, that like he understands where they're coming from, and that there is a way to like, I guess, find purpose or meaning, to, like rise above their station in life. I use, as a kind of wordplay, different homophones in the song of different words or meanings of the words tale, like TALE, stuff like that. And I'll point out a couple of definitions that play into the song. One of the like secondary definitions of tail, as in like spelled TAIL, like a animal tail or whatever. The secondary definition is like a limitation of an estate to a person or like their heirs. So I found that sort of an interesting definition to put into the song. And then there's like TEL, which is basically an artificial mound created by humans for basically funerary purposes. And then, Telltale, a person who heedlessly or maliciously reveals private or confidential matters, a tattler, talebearer, something like that. So, basically something that serves to reveal or disclose something else. And so the last thing that I actually want to talk about in this song, the section at the end where it becomes more melodic and all, and I'm basically just yelling in it, that's where it gets personal, and that's where like Lady Elm's lament for Eugene comes in. And that section I specifically worded, to address this own lament within myself of, losing these friends and this tribe that I valued so much. And what I did when I recorded this song, I had the lyrics in front of me and the computer and my microphone and everything, and just high volumes in my ear, being played back. But I set my phone in front of the microphone, or kind of like underneath it, with a picture of my two friends basically on their wedding day, because that was, that was a cool day. And I set it up there, hit record for that like one section where I'm just like basically yelling at the top of my lungs, and it changes into this melodic section. And I recorded that in one take, which, I mean, it's maybe only like 15 or 20 seconds, I don't know, but I was just, initially just kind of shouting it, and just kept intensifying and all till the end. I'm just like basically screaming it, at the top of my lungs, and getting more and more emotional about it, to the point that like when I hit stop, when I was done with it, I just started weeping. Like, it was very cathartic. It's the only time during this album that, I got that emotional where I actually started crying. And off the top of my head, I think it's the only time I've like cried at the end of it, during a song or whatever, since like recording Volume 1 a few years back. Like, I mean, it was definitely cathartic to like yell this stuff as if they were like right in front of me, because their picture was brought up on my phone. It's not like doing it bitterly or out of anger or anything like that, but it really is just me yelling this stuff as a lament, because they meant so much to me, and now they're no longer in my life. I haven't seen them in years now, and the wounds heal, they heal up, and time definitely helps you move on with life. I like to think I'm further along in my walk, and that I'm not the same person that I was the last time they saw me, that I've hopefully developed in character and as a person since then. But at the same time, I always thought that we would develop together. And that wasn't my decision. It wasn't. It was a consequence of the way things worked out. So for that reason alone, this song means a lot to me. Is it like the greatest song I've ever written? Probably not. But it's definitely like my third favorite song on this album. Maybe it should be higher, but I'm really proud of this song, straight up. I know I could change things about it, or make it better, or make it more cohesive, or whatever, but honestly, and I hope a year from now I can say the same thing, that there's nothing about the recording of this song that I regret at all. That this song is a testament of something that was in here that just needed to get out, after all this time. But that's all I have to say. I know I've gone way too long with this again, but tomorrow we'll talk about chapter 47, and that'll be the last video for volume 5. And until then, cheers, and hope you enjoy the music.